Welcome along to another video. I am That Cycling Chimp, and in this one, winter has finally came to Scotland. I've came down to the Pain Cave and I thought I would share some of my winter cycling tips and advice with you guys. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more, or maybe you're just curious about the channel, stick around, grab a coffee, kick back, and let's get on with the show. Winter cycling tips number 1, prepping your bike. The advice I have for this goes as follows. The first thing I do in the winter time is I put mudguards or fenders onto my bike. This is the single most line of defence that's going to keep debris and just general weather off your person and off your frame. Currently I'm running Raceblade Pro XLs, and this allows me to put wider tyres onto my bike. Which brings me into my second tip for you: run with fat and sturdy winter tyres. In the summertime and the drier seasons, I use Vittoria Zafiro Pro slicks, but when it comes into autumn and winter time, I tend to change my tyres. And at this moment in time, I changed my tyre over to a Gravel King EXT, which is more like a mountain bike tyre on my road bike. I find that the grip is a lot better and I feel a lot safer and more comfortable when I'm out riding. I also find if you lower your pressure a little bit, it gives you a little bit more surface contact with the road or whatever terrain you're going over, so you have less chance of coming off the bike. Another tip I can give you for prepping your bike is ride with lights. Make sure in the winter time, as it's getting darker earlier, that you've got a bright front light and a bright back light as well. Always make sure you've got a backup. I've got a few smaller lights that I keep on my person as well, and I always make sure when I come home that I charge my lights for the next adventure. Make sure your pedals and your footwear have good grip. There's nothing worse than having wet feet and then your feet slip on your pedals and you usually get an injury to your shin. Most cyclists these days we use clipless pedals. If you're not too sure what they are, I'll probably do a video on them. It's counterintuitive in name because you actually clip in and you're attached to the bike. Now it might sound a little bit daunting, it might sound a little bit scary, which it is at first, but once you start using them they become second nature, and I would never ride without them now. And the final tip I can give for prepping your bike in the winter is always clean and maintain your bike. You're going to be doing it a lot more through the winter months. Please make sure that you're keeping on top of your drivetrain, give it the tender loving care it needs, and remember, lubrication is the key. I always find if my bike's not too dirty after a ride, I might get away with a quick rinse down and a quick wipe down. And sometimes I even use baby wipes. But as long as you dry everything off after it, you shouldn't run into any problems whatsoever. And not only that, when you're doing that after every ride, you're getting a quick look over to see if there's any issues or any potential problems in the way. Winter cycling tip number 2, wear appropriate clothing. This topic's a little bit self-explanatory. The 3 major things you need to think about in winter is temperature, moisture and wind. So to start with, I always layer up before I go out. I'll start with my thermal bib tights. I usually wear a merino long sleeved woolen top. I'll probably wear a jersey on top of that. I'll then wear a lightweight windproof jacket, and if it's really cold I'll put on my heavy duty gilet. But you've got to watch you don't overdo it when you're layering up. As you start cycling, after a wee while you become pretty sweaty, so it's trying to find that balance, and you'll find that balance pretty quickly as you're doing it. The biggest challenge I've had this year is trying to keep my feet warm on the bike. Now, I sent out a question on my Instagram to my followers and there was quite a lot of recommendations that came back. I adopted some of those recommendations, which included wearing merino wool socks, which I do now. I've adopted to wearing overshoes on my cycling shoes, which are basically like the sleeves that cover. I bought a pair of neoprene ones, but this hasn't really eradicated the problem. One of my Instagram followers also suggested preheating my cycling shoes before I went out with a hairdryer. Sounds mad, but I'm actually going to try it to see if it works. But what I really want to try is a pair of fleece lined winter cycling boots. To keep your head warm, make sure you're wearing a hat underneath your helmet. Again, I use a merino wool one, but I actually get one to cover the tips of my ears. When you're out in the winter, you don't realise how cold it actually gets, and the tips of your ears get absolutely frozen, so make sure you're covering it up. Long finger gloves are a must in the winter time due to the wind chill. Your hands will get cold pretty quick. I find that midweight to heavyweight gloves are the best, but sometimes you may need to wear a glove liner inside. Neck gaiters and buffs are an absolute godsend. Not only do they keep your neck warm, but you can also pull them up to your face to keep the bottom of your face and your nose warm as well. I find they're a lot easier and a lot more comfortable to wear than a scarf, and you don't need to worry about said scarf getting stuck in your front wheel and coming off your bike. Another big tip is always carry a packable rain jacket with you. In Scotland, you're going to see rain 70% of the time, and you are guaranteed to get wet every single ride. And the last piece of advice for wearing appropriate clothing in the winter time is be seen. Highly reflective or bright coloured jerseys are a great thing to wear. Wear your oranges, your reds, your lime colours, or even wear a highly reflective jacket. There's too many times in the last wee while I've seen people wearing all black going out on their bike at night time. Yeah, you may look cool, but no drivers can see you, and that's part of the problem. And no wonder they get pretty frustrated with cyclists. So always remember to be seen. Winter cycling tips number 3, travelling safely. The biggest piece of advice I can give to all you guys for this one is plan your route. Doesn't matter if you're commuting or you're just out in a training session, planning will help you out. Know the weather forecast. This will let you know what elements and what conditions you're going to be riding in. Keep up to date with it on your phone apps. Personally, I use Clear Outside. I was encouraged to use that when I was doing photography, but I find it gives an absolutely brilliant short and long range forecast. AccuWeather is pretty good as well, but just your normal weather app on your phone is sufficient. But always make sure you know what you're going to be riding in. This is the biggest piece of advice that somebody gave me before. Ride with caution, a little bit slower, and remember to brake earlier. I adopt it in all my cycling in the winter time now after falling off the bike last year because I was going too fast, I wasn't paying attention, got to a bit of black ice and I braked too late. So there are a couple of bits of advice that definitely take on board. But I find if it's too dodgy to cycle outside, I just consider maybe an indoor training day, a recovery day, or I do a bit of yoga, strength training. Sometimes I even go for a walk, but it is your personal preference. Winter cycling tip number 4, eating and drinking. Now the advice for this is mostly overlooked in the winter time, and it's drinking plenty fluid. Just because it's cold, you still need to keep your fluid intake up or hydrated. So you need to make sure that you are hydrating on the bike and off bike after a ride. And you can still use your electrolytes if that's the elixir that you use. But definitely make sure you're taking on plenty of liquids. Eating well, don't forget your healthy eating habits. The good thing about winter is you can have some warm soups or some stews, but as long as there's plenty of veggies in it, it's absolutely great. You still need to remember to eat a healthy balanced diet as well. I know it's coming up to Christmas time soon and chocolate is the thing, and I love chocolate and chocolate's brilliant, but it's not exactly the greatest for you. This last piece of advice for eating and drinking is quite a peculiar one. Some say it's a necessity, others say it's an unnecessary distraction. But if you're out on a ride, stop for a coffee. A warm drink on a cold day is not only going to heat you up, but it's going to get your motivation going again. Sometimes in the winter time, my rides just are glorified coffee runs. When I get home after a cold bike ride, another hot beverage I like to have is Bovril, or beef tea as it's known as in Scotland. Now this is an absolute winter comfort food. It's not exactly the best for you because of the sodium content, it is pretty salty, and it's not really for vegetarians or vegans either, may I add, but it does help warm you up, and I think it is a great comfort food. My last and final winter cycling tip number 5 is recovery. Remember to still have recovery days. Just because you can't ride doesn't mean that it's a fail of a day. It gives you the chance to catch up in maybe some work you've been looking to do, but also you can start looking at routes and adventures for next season. But if you do go out and ride, have fun, and always remember this little quote: a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. Well, that's us got to the end of another video. I would just like to thank you all for sticking around and listening to my advice today. If you enjoyed it, give us a huge thumbs up, and if you really enjoyed it, smash that subscribe button, because your subscribing keeps me riding. I just want to say a huge hello to my new subscribers in the last couple of days. I can't thank you any more for hitting that button. I hope to see you in the next one, but in the meantime, you can check out my last adventure here, where I crushed 50 kilometres of the Ayrshire coast, or you can check out the playlist down there, which is previously on That Cycling Chimp. Until the next time guys, bye for now, and remember, you all are simply the best.